China is producing, building, and putting out to sea warships at a rate that puts us to shame. Their
How did we let
manufacture
this happen? You said that the Rand Corporation, was sounding the alarms, and was no one listening?
I think it was part of this Pollyannish belief that we could have it all, that we could j- enjoy a peace dividend from the Cold War where we could invest less in our own defense, but engage the Chinese Communist Party diplomatically and economically, telling ourselves that they would just have to change politically over time and the military threat would just magically take care of itself. We thought that we could live in a world without trade offs, that we could maximize our economic prosperity and maximize our security with zero trade off between the two. That's not reality. That's not the world we live in 2025.
Michael Sobolik, you may recognize, he's been on this show a few times, and we're happy to have him back to talk about TikTok, the Nippon Steel acquisition of U.S. Steel that did not happen, and other China-related matters. He is our expert always, and great insight to what may change now with China in the United States with President Trump back in the White House. But let me remind you, please subscribe. Just hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. We love having you with us. You can also subscribe to my Substack and, follow us. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're there. We're there everywhere. So just hit that subscribe button. It's free. Just absolutely no obligation. Michael Sobolik will talk about TikTok next. Happy New Year, Michael. It's great to see you. Welcome back.
Great to talk to you again, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
There's been a lot that's transpired since the last time we spoke, most notably the election. And when it comes to talking about China, whoever's in the White House really, really matters. And in fact, right now we've got majorities in the House, the Senate, obviously a Republican president, and a unique Republican president, obviously, who has a relationship already with Xi Jinping. What do you think changes that with Trump coming back in that may have, I don't know, the last 4 years saw China really build up? How do you see the relationship moving now?
My hope, and I think my expectation is that number one, President Trump is likely going to walk away from the framework that President Biden had of quote unquote managing competition with the Chinese Communist Party. I I've been a pretty loud critic of President Biden's approach to the U.S. China relationship. I mean, if you believe that we are in a Cold War with the Chinese Communist Party, then there's nothing to manage. There's something to be won or lost. And I think that is language that the President-elect Trump understands. I think 2020 was one of the most competitive recentering years of China policy that the United States has had in 3 or 4 decades. And that happened under President Trump's leadership. So I think early indications are based on what he is saying about Greenland and the Panama Canal. Like these are China issues. They may not look like it on the surface, but they are, with China competing in the Arctic and with China developing inroads into our own hemisphere in Latin America. This is not parlor talk. This is not, casual press conference remarks from President Trump. These are real serious national security issues, and China's at the middle of all of it. And he gets that. So I think you're going to see certainly some competitive actions from the incoming administration.
Well, yeah, I think winning and losing is something that Trump, that's a language that he thrives on. And it is interesting. You brought up Greenland and the Panama Canal. And I think people, some doubters and Trump haters and never Trumpers and so forth are laughing and saying, what the hell is he talking about? But this Greenland notion, it's not the first time it has come up, right? How could Greenland help the United States in this whole relationship with the rest of the world?
Listen, Greenland sits at a really important spot of real estate when you look at a world map. The Arctic is one of the emerging fields of competitive space with the United States and China, not to mention Russia. You have new transit waterways for shipping opening there. You have some critical minerals that are being competed over for access up there.
Yeah.
And the Arctic is going to be one of the primary terrains for where this great power competition that is continuing to play out. This is going to be one of the most important terrains on the face of the planet. And with Greenland, it's partially a critical mineral play for the United States because China has really cornered the market on rare earth minerals over the past few years. And we have a whole lot of restrictions for mining inside of the United States. And that's kind of it's very related debate about whether we should, whether we shouldn't. But
Right.
Greenland offers some opportunity of access to some rare earth minerals, which is very important. It also is important because transit shipping is going to be really crucial and important here, not just from an economic perspective, but when you talk about the United States and our allies, the United States and Europe working together and having uninterrupted access for not just shipping, but for our navies, like this is going to matter a lot. And Greenland is not only a crucial part of that transatlantic land bridge, but it also is in the crosshairs of China and the Chinese
Right.
Communist Party because they're looking for ways to bifurcate the United States from our allies and partners all around the world. And they've had their eyes set on Greenland for a while now. So it's partly a defensive play for the United States, but it also is a signal to Beijing that we're not going to let them dominate the Arctic.
Right. This, again, I'm learning so much from you right now, and I have been seeing this topic, whereas maybe 10 years ago it sounded so strange, Greenland, but now, and if you're the Dutch or Denmark rather, if you're Denmark, and there's a price for everything, Michael, isn't there? This is not out of the realm of possibilities.
I don't think it is. No. I mean, I think whenever in American history we've had debates about acquiring new territory, initially it's easy to laugh off, oh my gosh, acquiring Alaska, how is that ever going to happen? And there have been some situations where no, it doesn't work out, but plenty where it does. Now, I also will say how we go about this will matter quite a bit because you better believe that the Chinese Communist Party will be waiting to compare the United States' interest in Greenland to their interest in Taiwan. And it's an unfair comparison. The Chinese Communist Party specializes in unfair propaganda and unfair
Yeah.
comparison. So they're going to do something like that. And we'll
Yeah.
need to be ready to respond and to blunt that propaganda. So how we go about this is going to be important. Well, Denmark is an ally. They've actually been pretty forward leaning with helping us counter the CCP. They've been very involved in American wars in the past. So they're a friend. So how we go about this is going to matter quite a bit. But never say never. Never say never with stuff like this. We'll see how it
I
plays
think
out.
it's really interesting that the son of the president-elect just flew to Greenland. I mean, that wasn't for sightseeing. We can be sure of that. And you look back at the Louisiana Purchase, all these interesting times in our country. I don't know. This resurgence of President Trump and the new political capital that he has brought with him to the White House, or is going to bring with him to the White House, is interesting to me. And the way that he's flexing those political muscles is interesting to me. And it feels different this time, Michael. And I have to believe that China's got to sense that too, right?
Well, yes, I think so. And look further south.
The Chinese U.S. Treasury hack, a new virus spreading in China. What else is unfolding behind the scenes that, we're not learning about, we're not being told about, or worse, what critical information is being hidden from the public? Why gamble with your financial future? Regardless of who's in office, I don't care who's sitting behind the Oval Office, safeguarding your wealth is essential. Many of us are hopeful in Trump's return, but we all remember the challenges of the last election and the interference that hindered progress. So relying solely on digital systems or banks, that's a risk you can't afford to take. And that's why I want you to take a look at American Independence Gold. Visit tafoyagold.com now to learn more, or call 833-324-4653. I'll repeat those for you. Tafoya Gold, TAFOYAGOLD.com, or call 833-324-4653. For generations, gold and silver have been the ultimate safe haven, weathering wars, recessions, market crashes. This is more than just owning gold. It's about taking control of your financial future. As a proud veteran-owned company, I love that, American Independence Gold goes the extra mile by supporting military families. And they cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts and donate a portion of every purchase to Tunnels to Tower Foundation. I love that organization. Don't wait to secure your future. Act before it's too late. Visit tafoyagold.com now to learn more, or here's the number again, 833-324-4653. That's 833-324-4653 or tafoyagold.com. Make the smart move for your future today at tafoyagold.com. You can find all of that in the show notes.
With the Panama Canal, this used to be something that the United States controlled with a Jimmy Carter brokered treaty or a set of treaties in 1978. Things were set in motion that Panama would then control the canal. The United States would retain access to it and the ability to deploy our military if that were ever threatened. That's great, but the reality is that China has made inroads not just to the country of Panama, but to the canal specifically, with ports on either side of the canal that PRC companies operate. Now, the crisis that people are worried about is, what if, say, China goes after Taiwan? They stage either a blockade or an invasion or a combination of both. If they are able to either deny or complicate America's ability to move military assets from the Atlantic to the Pacific through the canal, that's huge. Even a delay would put us on our back footing and make it difficult to forward deploy our forces to the Indo-Pacific. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And the president-elect signaling that the Panama Canal matters, that Greenland matters, he's not saying this publicly, but his advisors are saying this, that this is about China.
Yeah.
I think the messaging is very clear.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. He doesn't come right out and say that, although he has talked about China's relationship to the Panama Canal and that that China's basically running it. But I underestimate this president at your peril, I think, is a message that China should take right now. But given that, China's readiness militarily for anything right now seems to be, is it more forceful than what the United States is sitting with? This is a concern, I think, for everyone, because I don't consider China a force for good in the world. And I do consider the United States a force for good in the world. Maybe I'm biased, Michael. I don't know. But how do we compare militarily right now to China, given what, might be coming here with Taiwan?
So for a long time, America's military advantage and just military, frankly, outmatch of the People's Liberation Army was something that we took for granted for a very long time. I can't remember the exact year, Michelle, but it was either maybe 2009 or 2011 when some military planners who were running war games in a Taiwan war scenario, somewhere around that time, the Rand Corporation, long-standing defense, government-affiliated defense think tank in the United States, started sounding the alarm that if trends continued, we couldn't take our military overmatch for granted when it comes to a war in Taiwan. Those trends have gotten even worse. So, for instance, something that the Biden administration has started sounding the alarm on publicly, and they are correct on this, is that in a Taiwan war, it's pretty likely that the United States would run out of ammunition in the opening week, maybe week and a half. But we are looking at a situation where our stockpiles would dwindle very quickly. And that's not even talking about the ship issue. China is producing, building, and putting out to sea warships at a rate that puts us to shame.
How do we let this happen? You said that the Rand Corporation, was sounding the alarms, and was no one listening?
I think it was part of this Pollyannish belief that we could have it all, that we could enjoy a peace dividend from the Cold War where we could invest less in our own defense, but engage the Chinese Communist Party diplomatically and economically, telling ourselves that they would just have to change politically over time. And the military threat would just magically take care of itself. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but as you know from our past conversations, I'm very skeptical of that conventional wisdom that dominated our China policy for so long. We thought that we could live in a world without trade-offs, that we could maximize our economic prosperity and maximize our security with zero trade-off between the two. That's not reality. That's not the world we live in 2025 today. And we find ourselves in this difficult situation where, not across the board, no, but in key metrics, the military balance is contested, which is not good.
How comfortable are you with the notion, or maybe you're uncomfortable, that we can catch up? I mean, because it sounds like what you're saying is we have to play catch up.
We do. We absolutely do. Like, we need a generational investment in our national defense. Now is not the time to do more with less. Like, if you look at the world right now in the critical sectors of the globe that matter the most to the United States, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific, you have a war in Ukraine, you have a war in the Middle East with Israel and Iran and its proxies, and you have the possibility of an outbreak of war in China, either in the South China Sea or Taiwan, maybe the Sino-Indian border. Like, pick your crisis point. This is a increasing North Korea. Like, this is an increasingly destabilizing world that we are living in, and nothing is monocausal. But one of the biggest drivers of that trend towards destabilizing is our unwillingness to invest in strength. We have to do this. We have to have a generational investment. And I looked at people like Senator Wicker on Capitol Hill, who last year charted a vision of what that could look like, but it's going to take some tough decisions and some political courage to invest in our ability to win and, importantly, to deter war from breaking out beyond what it already has.
You know what I think part of China's strategy is, as always, propaganda, in trying to convince our youth that they're really okay, that they're the nice guys. And we've seen this now. There was a study done at Rutgers about the effectiveness of Chinese propaganda through TikTok. Again, you and I have talked about TikTok multiple times. I want to bring it up again because we're nearing that moment where it's either got to be sold to an American entity or it's going to be banned. I'm not sure what's going to happen yet. And it seems like President Trump has softened toward TikTok because it helped him win, right? It helped him win the election. But it's very dangerous when this Chinese-owned company is controlling the messaging that is coming into our country and to a lot of young people, and the favorability, the sense of China, they're all right, is changing because of this propaganda. How do you explain this to everyone in a way that makes, that proves to them, look, what you're hearing and seeing, it's not accurate.
What's that old expression in media?
So I don't know anyone who sleeps perfectly every night. I certainly did not, but I'm sleeping so much better. And I want to tell you about what I found that helps me do it. It's not a drug. It's not a pill. It's not a prescription. It's a cream. And I just apply it at bedtime. It's that simple. And let me tell you something. I was a skeptic, but I tried it once and I was amazed. It really works. I sleep great. The company is Sleep Cream, and they use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils like lavender, rose. So I put it on before turning in for the evening. Bottoms of my feet, sometimes the insides of my forearms and elbows. That works best for me. And within minutes, it helps me to relax and allows my body to do what it's supposed to do, which is sleep. You can find them at sleepcream.com, and cream is spelled CREME. Just try it a couple nights. See if it works for you as well as it does for me. And if you don't experience better sleep, Sleep Cream's going to refund your purchase, guaranteed, and you don't have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcreme.com, sleepcreme.com. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout, and you'll get free standard shipping on your first order. That's GAMEDAY at checkout for free standard shipping on your first order. So if you're ready for your best sleep ever, and who isn't, sleepcreme.com.
what's that old expression in media? The medium is the message.
Right,
You know,
right,
it's not just the opinion that's being shared, it's the medium over which the conversation is happening. And the implicit, I guess maybe an addendum or a corollary of that is whoever controls the medium has a lot of control over the message too. And this is the problem with TikTok. It's not the content on the app. Nobody in Washington, D.C. has a problem with American 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds uploading videos to the app. That's free expression. Like,
right,
that's fine. That's
right.
totally fine. And listen, I understand President-elect Trump's concerns about censorship, particularly with COVID, with the Hunter Biden laptop story. He mentioned both of those in his amicus brief with the Supreme Court. Like, I'm very sympathetic to those concerns. But with TikTok, the issue is not about censoring Americans. The question is who controls this app? And importantly, the law that Congress passed does not censor anybody at all. Like if you read this bill, and it's only 13 or 14 pages, it is a requirement for TikTok to divest from CCP controlled ByteDance. That's all it is. And the proposition is simple. TikTok can continue operating in the United States as long as it is not controlled by a foreign adversary. That's it. This is a very simple thing. And when you talk about why that matters, we were talking about a Taiwan scenario a few minutes ago. Imagine how China could wield TikTok in a Taiwan crisis to divide Americans, to sow disinformation about what actually is or isn't happening in the Taiwan Strait, to try to convince American soldiers to not report to their post, thinking it's some sort of a false alarm, and to delay our ability to respond. The ways they could leverage TikTok are terrifying. And there is evidence, as you alluded to, that they are already shaping the information environment favorably for the CCP. So, real quick, finally, like, what does all this mean right now as it goes to the Supreme Court? Listen, the only person standing in the way of TikTok's continued operation is Xi Jinping. He has an export control on the algorithm and will not allow it to be sold. Now, President Trump still has some options here. He could potentially force a sale without the algorithm, and there are American buyers, credible American buyers,
Right,
waiting in the wings.
right.
Like this could happen, but the law that Congress passed and that the Circuit Court upheld, it's a it is a political solution that already exists. I We'll see how the Supreme Court rules, but I personally think the law was very good policy, and I hope that the Supreme Court comes to a similar conclusion too.
It is terrifying when you think of these companies. You're right, the medium is the message. And, when you think about Google and Zuckerberg, who now is giving us our free speech back, isn't he a nice guy? All of that stuff and the control over what we hear or don't hear, or what you just described, it is terrifying. Finally, I want to ask you about this, and I've been looking forward to this because I didn't understand this. Nippon Steel wanted to acquire U.S. Steel. Nippon Steel is a Japanese company, excuse me. And, Joe Biden, basically Biden administration blocked this deal. And it sounds like Trump is on the same side as Joe Biden with this. From a sort of a 30,000 foot point of view, Michael, how do you explain what happened here, why it's not good, or is it good for America, and what the fallout might be?
Sure. So conceptually, like this is very related to what we were just talking about with rebuilding our, not just our military strength, but our industrial capacity to be able to produce things like warships quickly. The United States has lost that capacity over the span of several decades. And we're at the point now where, I mean, some people may not like this reality, but the United States is going to need some help from allies and partners who do have that capacity, Japan being one of them. And there's a trade off here between rebuilding our military quickly and who gets the jobs to do that. And the optics and the reality of a foreign company uh, stepping into this space means that there's the possibility of US workers losing some jobs.
Okay.
listen, that's a political sensitivity. It's a political reality.
Yeah.
Um, Politicians need to respond to those things, but politicians, by the same token, also need to look at reality when it comes to rebuilding our military and responding to critical national security threats in a timely manner. And we don't have the indigenous capability right now to do those things. So right now, like saying no to this acquisition, you're not just saying no to an acquisition, you're saying no to what could be part of a solution to rebuilding our military might in a timely manner. And listen, um, it's not really great to say that that a U.S. ally like Japan, this acquisition would pose a threat to the United States. That's not really a great way to talk to your allies and partners. They are not the source of the threat here. It's the Chinese
Right.
Communist Party. It's Russia.
Right.
It's Vladimir Putin. It's the Iranians. It's the North Koreans. Like, we need to be very clear here. And we also need, while we overcorrect from decades and decades of unmitigated globalization, which there's a lot of problems we need to fix, we also need, by the same token, we got to be careful that we don't trend too deeply into protectionism in the process. Like, listen, we need to look at these decisions in really strategic ways. And I don't think President Biden came to his decision in a really strategic way. I think this was motivated by domestic politics, which I get it, but it's not really great for national security.
Do you think it's going to change? Because this issue isn't necessarily settled. I mean, there are going to be lawsuits and the like, and you've got a new administration coming in. Do you think this changes?
Uh, I hope there's a reevaluation. I do not know right now if they will. I don't know what the terms of it would even be if they were to revisit this. I hope so. And even if this doesn't get reevaluated or redecided, what I hope is we have a shared clarity across both political parties, across all the executive branch, the legislative branch, that we need to be strong. And it's more than just saying the right things. The United States needs to have a military that can win and deter wars from breaking out. And that has to be our lodestar. That has to be the guiding principle. Because listen, Xi Jinping has told the People's Liberation Army to be ready by 2027 for Taiwan. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go to war in 2 years, but it means that he expects them to be ready to go to war in 2 years. We do not have time to waste.
Michael Sobolik is the author of China's Great Game. I can't recommend it enough to understand the whole picture of China as it relates to the United States and really the rest of the world. It's a tremendous primer. I would recommend anyone get this. It's very accessible. It's not like you're going to be diving into something that you can't understand. That's what I like about this book, Michael. And you've moved to the Hudson Institute. So tell us quickly what's changed for you. What are you doing at the Hudson Institute?
Thanks for asking. So yeah, I was thrilled to join Hudson at the beginning of this month. I'm going to be working with former Congressman Mike Gallagher on some initiatives that he feels really strongly about. He was previously the chairman of the House Select Committee on Competition with the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm excited to be part of this vision that he has of building out a plan to win this Cold War. I think the think tank community broadly can sometimes find ourselves talking in a very insular way, living inside of a policy bubble that really doesn't move beyond Washington. And beyond that, it's really easy for think tanks to publish a lot of policy papers and not really have a tangible impact on outcomes.
Right.
We want these initiatives that we're building out at Hudson to be epicenter ground zero for building out implementable policy solutions to win a Cold War with the Chinese Communist Party. And I think we have a lot of good stuff coming up ahead. Happy to keep you in the loop on it, but
Please.
we plan to leave our mark, and we want to be part of the effort that wins this thing for the United States.
It's heartening to hear that, and people should be excited about them. You can follow them on X at Hudson Hudson Institute, and always follow Michael Sobolik Sobolik, and get his book China's Great Game, because this is a great way to introduce yourself to really one of the massive issues of the day, of our time. So, Michael, it's great to see you. Happy New Year, and thanks so much for taking the time for us.
Always a pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Like Michael and his book, Be Brave, Do Good, like the Hudson Institute, we hope will be brave and do good. And we hope this next administration will be brave and do good. Thanks for listening, everyone.